Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kenny Holdsman.
Good afternoon. What an honor to be in the Ralph Roberts Forum on Giving Tuesday following three brilliant presenters and people from Comcast. This is a total privilege for me, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm Kenny Holdsman. I'm one of 5 co-founders of Philadelphia Youth Basketball, and I serve as its CEO. And like Comcast, we are a homegrown, Philadelphia-born and bred grassroots organization that's gotten a bit bigger, headed toward the treetops. I want to share with you a little bit about my career journey, and much appreciation to Freddie and to Nick for inviting me to try to tease out a little bit of lessons of 30 years of a working life. So I am 55, so exactly 25 years ago, I was working on the 47th floor of the Mellon building as a lawyer for Ballard Spahr. I'd been there for a bit over a year, trying to find my footing, a bit unsure whether I fit, whether it aligned with who I am. And I'm working there one night, very dutifully, as the young associates did, and a gentleman comes into my office, Arthur Macedon. Arthur loomed large in the firm, ran the litigation department, probably kept Boyd's men's store in business. That was one of about 25 amazing power suits that he wore. And he put his hand on the interior frame, door frame of my office, didn't quite walk in, and he said, "Kenny, you know, I'm not certain that you really belong here, that you should be spending your career here." And I was shaken to the core. And I tried to gather myself. I felt myself welling up, and I said, "Are you saying that I'm not adding value, my work isn't good?" I've never heard from any team, any community, any friend group that I wasn't adding value. He said, "Well, you know, we'll talk about it further." About face, he leaves my office. Whoa. Call my wife. I'm like, I don't know what just hit me, but I ran home and I called 3 of Arthur's partners who I'd been doing work for. And I said, "Has my work been thin or untimely? I just had this really weird conversation with Arthur Macedon." After all, Arthur was the revered guy in the firm, best known for introducing David L. Cohen of Comcast lore, now the ambassador to Canada, introduced David L. to Ed Rendell, great litigator, and I wouldn't say he was adored. He was somewhere between revered and feared. I come back to my office the next morning, and there he is waiting for me. Whoa. "Kenny, why are you calling my partners telling them that I've fired you?" All I was really trying to convey is that the elements of a good career is when you can hook together what it is that you care about, you're passionate about, with what it is that you're good at. And I just don't happen to think it's here. You can stay as long as you want, but I think the way you're built and what you're really about doesn't lend itself to being here. So fast forward about 10 years ago, sadly at age 70, Arthur passes, and there's an amazing memorial service at the Kimmel Center. Lots of decorated speakers, David L. and Ed Rendell, but I was really taken by his daughter Claudia's speech. And she talked a lot about Arthur as a human being and raising her up as a kid and some of his eccentricities. And I got home and I wrote her an email, and I outlined my whole history with her father. And as a lot of my friends and colleagues know, several of them are here, brevity and concision, not really my things. I can really go on. Dr. Claudia Macedon writes me one sentence, and she says, "My father was the master of the unwelcomed conversation. Wow. The unwelcomed it was, but it really sunk in. And it meant something to me that sometimes those formative moments are unwelcomed, and the perspective that you receive them might not really be how they're intended or really what is in your best interest to make meaning of them. So I figure out how to kind of realign and rewire my career, and I moved to the Philadelphia School District, leading its service, learning, and youth leadership programming. And some of that I had touched before going to law school, but it was pretty new for me. And there was an amazing school superintendent there named David Hornbeck, became a mentor to me. And why it was he believed in me, I'm not certain. But he said, Kenny, I chair the board of the Children's Defense Fund, and our signature program running out of the Black Community Crusade for Children is called Freedom Schools, all about the civil rights movement. And we want our young people to be junior servant leaders in freedom schools. And I say, David, we have 2 freedom schools. We can't go and train 300 students and then have them come back and do their work in 2 freedom schools. He said, well, what's the problem? Go build like another 25. David did not suffer from the Benjamin Mays, the crisis of low aim. And that was a really powerful lesson that I took with me. So I got Dr. Greg Carr, the district's scholar on race and culture, and Aisha Imani, a master educator from William Penn High School, to come into the central office and join me. And you get a sense of Aisha's spirit just by looking at this photo. And away we went to build more freedom schools. And Aisha, she goes by Mama Aisha. She runs the Sankofa Freedom Academy up in Frankfurt. And we went to the Friends Neighborhood Guild in North Philly. And we're around this big oval table. And there's these amazing educators and community activists who run community-based organizations all around our city. And I walk in there, and I'm like in my lawyer uniform, black wingtips, blue shirt, red tie, full of myself, self-important. And I give a presentation to this group of folks, some of them, like Aisha, wearing a dashiki or African garb. And I talk, and then somebody asks a question, and I talk again, and it was like a give and take, not a community conversation. Meeting ends, Aisha pulls me off to the side, and she says, Kenny, I love you, I care about you, but I gotta give you a little bit of tough medicine. This is freedom schools. This dates back to the 60s in the black struggle in Mississippi and Alabama, where the community was self-determining and setting up a series of schools and doing protests and voter get out. And yeah, there's room for white allies, but this is a black-led crusade. Wow. Tough medicine it was. Aisha was a truth teller. But what it did for me is it began my own journey into self-discovery, a little bit of self-awareness. What does it mean to be a white person, an ally, a co-conspirator, trying to help a community self-determine? Aisha did that for me. It was the best gift I have ever received from a colleague. And to this day, I have her voice in my head with just great admiration and respect. So fast forward, my career goes on, great run in the school district with Aisha and Greg Carr and others. I spend about 6 years doing national work at the Academy for Educational Development, and then I leave there and I go to Arthur Ashe Youth Tennis and Education, which is now called Legacy. And about 2 years through, a number of men and women in the basketball community would approach me and they would say, look, you've got a budget, a team, a board of directors, an amazing facility. an on-court, off-court program. But I don't understand, if we want to reach a lot of young people at a really deep scale, on-court, off-court, career exposure, youth development, why do we see these programs popping up for these sort of country club kinds of sports? We get the power of the alternative sport, tennis and squash and rowing and golf and equestrian, but we need something that really builds upon and leverages the people and the power of the game of basketball. And I kept hearing this on and on for about 3 years, and ultimately a group of us wrote a concept paper to build a program, an organization, and a center that would have transformative power in the lives of a scalable number of young people. And I bring this to my wife, and she says, "You can't not do this." Amy doesn't speak in double negatives often. I think she did that for effect. She's a pretty good grammarian, if that's the right word, probably not. And then she says to me, "I think that this pulls together so much of who you are, what you've done, and what you want your impact in the world to be. I think you've discovered your ikigai." Ikigai, what's that? So out comes this Japanese schematic, and to kind of distill it to its simplicity, you can see it over my shoulder. It represents the intersection of what it is that you're good at, what it is that you love, what it is that the world needs, perhaps, and what it is that the world will pay you for. And she said that I have located my ikigai. All right, then, well, if this was going to happen, we needed some money, and we raised like a mere $50,000, which would have represented, I don't know, in my nonprofit salary, about 6 months of runway. You can't not do this. So I wanted to figure out, how do we build this massive movement and coalition of people? And I go to see a guy who I knew a bit, but he was really my mother's colleague from Simon Gratz High School in North Philly, a man named Bill Ellerby. Coach Ellerby, he spent much of his career Vietnam War veteran, 2 tours of duty, a basketball coach, a math teacher, a developer of people, young adults. And Coach L said to me, "You know, Kenny, I don't know if I have much gas left in the tank to do this, but it probably should be done. But here's the problem. Would there really be the appetite and the enthusiasm in the Philadelphia philanthropic community, donor community, high net worth individual community to invest in transformative experiences for lower income kids of color, especially black kids who are the predominant players of the game of basketball in our city?" I thought, wow, that's like heavy words, fighting words for sure. And Coach L was trying to say to me, did I recognize that the playing field was not yet level, we're not yet in a post-racial America, and this would be far harder than raising money for a tennis organization or a squash organization, and on and on. Coach was right that this would be challenging, but also right in his notion that if we could do this in our city, we could make enormous impact. So away we went, building Philadelphia youth basketball. I have known nothing prior to this about building a startup. I've learned so much from all of my colleagues, board members, many of whom are here. We are building a $30 million center in North Philadelphia, in the heart of Nicetown, that's going to enable us to expand our reach in breadth and depth from 1,200 kids to 7,000 kids. And to Coach Ellerby's point, this is a $30 million center that we're building, and it's going to sit next to a $15 million generator for workforce development and economic opportunity. $30 million, we have raised $27 million over 7 years. Today's Giving Tuesday. I promise you there's not a pitch coming. But if you're so inspired, please do. A number of my colleagues are here, and they can advocate in really authentic, great ways for the work it is that we do. I want to close on this point. Find your ikigai. Find that red thread in your life, that one consistent ingredient that runs through the entirety of your professional life, your civic life, your spiritual life. And if that red thread can connect and cohere all that you do, all that you are, all that you want to become, it's going to be an amazing career, one with impact, one with purpose, and one with meaning. So with that said, thank you so much, and I hope the photography crew, after we finish, will allow my colleagues to come up for a bit of a team picture. Thank you, everyone.